I'm not quite done with you just yet, 2024. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I've got a tier list ranking of all the 2024 TV shows that I watched in 2024. Last year was filled with tons of new movie and TV show releases, so I got to a good chunk of shows, but there's still some that I haven't watched that are big shows that I have on this list, but I have a special tier designated for them. You'll see what I mean in a second. But before I get into this ranking, hit that like button, comment down below your ranking of the 2024 TV shows, and of course, subscribe into that notification bell to help reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. Without further ado, you guys know the drill. Let's dive in. The tiers I have are S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and instead of F tier, I have need to catch up on, meaning I haven't seen it, but it's on my list and I will get around to it at some point, hopefully. These are fully randomized. Some of these shows actually started in late 2023 and are still ongoing with new episodes in 2024. I'll address those up front, but without further ado, I say we just do this thing. First up, we got Skeleton Crew. This is a Star Wars Disney Plus series that started up in, I think, very beginning of December. There's a few more episodes left, so it'll end mid-January, but honestly, so far, I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would, and it's just more entertaining than most recent Star Wars projects on Disney+. It feels the most removed and detached from the Skywalker saga, which is for the best. It doesn't feel weighed down by the fact that it has to fit in between this movie and this show, or this movie and this episode of the Clone Wars. Like, doesn't matter. It's its own thing. It does have a very, 80s coming-of-age feel with these kids accidentally discovering a ship and then going on this galactic adventure. Jude Law is having a fun time. Everyone seems to be having fun in this show, and I'm enjoying it. It's not by any means the most memorable thing I've ever seen, but for what we've gotten so far, I'm in. And, it's been a fun adventure every week. It does remind me somewhat of episodes of the Clone Wars in a sense where it's a little kiddie, but that's okay. I mean, I grew up on Clone Wars. I get that if you're under the age of 10 watching this, you probably love it even more. So I would say, this is tough. I would say probably back of B tier with it. It's not at all as bad as I thought it was going to be based on those first trailers. I'm really enjoying myself for the most part, actually. So moving on, we got Creature Commandos. This is the first ever DCU project. It's a TV show. I don't think a lot of people are watching it, to be honest with you. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't see behind the scenes. I just don't know many people personally who are watching this show. The finale drops this week. I'll be watching. I'll probably have a My Final Thoughts video. I did a review on the first 2 episodes, I want to say, back in December, but it's about to wrap up, so I'll have a My Final Thoughts video. I'm going to throw this in A tier. Creature Commandos has been consistently really good with some great episodes that stand out. I'm enjoying it on a week-to-week basis, and I think it's a really well-structured show because you've got this team of Creature Commandos, and each episode sort of progresses the main plot, but takes time to give a backstory to each member of the team. For example, G.I. Robot, Cheers to the Tin Man, I think that's episode 3, is my favorite episode of the show. There's cat hair going all over the place, so I'm swatting at it like flies. But that episode really hit me. You get a backstory on the Bride, Weasel, recently Dr. Phosphorus. So each episode, like I said, has its main plot for about 15 minutes, and then for the other 5 to 7 minutes, we're getting a backstory on each of these characters and how they got to the point they're at in this story where they have to be on this team. How did they become a villain in the eyes of the public, right? Really well done. It's got the James Gunn witty humor. It's crude at times with the violence and language, but that's nothing new. If you've seen The Suicide Squad or Peacemaker, James Gunn likes to insert that stuff in his shows, but it's just fresh. The episodes are like 22 minutes long tops, so they fly by. Once the entire season's out, it'll be like maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours, so it'll be like a movie length. It will be really easy for people to sit down and binge this in one sitting, but I'm invested in this world. There's hope for DC with this show, even it being animated, and I would love to see a lot of these characters come into live action form, which I think is actually happening technically in Superman, because Frank Grillo is playing Rick Flag Sr. He voices him in this show, and he's playing him in Superman, so ready for more of that, hopefully. But next we have The Bear Season 3. Shocks me that I'm having to do this, but I have to go C tier with it, because it's average, and that's not what I expect from The Bear. The Bear Season 1 and 2, some of my favorite seasons of television, I'd argue, ever. Watched the hell out of them. They're very memorable moments and episodes that you can watch, and they're just magnificent. The Season 1 finale, the Season 1 one-take episode. In Season 2, you got Forks, you got You know, the Seven Fishes episode, all those episodes, very memorable television, like some of the best writing and intense dramatic scenes you'll ever see. Then you get to this season and it's like we kind of just screech to a halt. The first two seasons move at like a lightning fast pace. This one is basically the meandering season. And what really irritated me is it hit us with the to be continued at the end for some weird reason, because there was nothing to continue. I mean, this was like the start of the season. Season 4 is basically going to be part 2. They should have just dropped them all at once. And I don't know why that's become a new trend in TV. A lot of times, you know, there are seasons that have cliffhanger endings, but the main story of that season is concluded. This didn't really bring anything to a close. It kind of just randomly ended. And now we get 10 more episodes, I think, in June that are going to be season 4. And so that frustrates me. That's not the only show on this list that did that. It's becoming a popular trend to not complete your season. I don't understand that. Like, in terms of characters progressing, having arcs, in this individual season, they didn't really do much. So C tier, by the bare standards, this is a big drop-off. So hopefully season 4 can get us right back on track. Next, we have The Acolyte. I didn't include F tier in this because I don't think anything in this is that abysmal, but this is probably the worst show I watched this year alongside another one I'll talk about in a second. But I'm putting The Acolyte in D tier. It has a couple moments that stand out to me, some cool lightsaber duels, but at its core, this is flawed Star Wars in my opinion. It tries to contradict the way of the Jedi and introduce like a new set of rules and recontextualize everything we thought we knew about the Jedi. It was very frustrating when it comes to just the lore of Star Wars. And this shows an example of a series that thinks it's way smarter than it actually is. Like, the majority of the time, you can be about 10 steps ahead of any of the big reveals in the show. And when major reveals do happen and we're supposed to be like, oh, nothing was there, because a lot of these performances are pretty stale. And honestly, this is really lackluster at best for Star Wars. The worst episode of the show is a flashback episode that gives us a little more depth on why a certain group of Jedi are acting a certain way in the present day. Well, later in the series, we basically get that same exact episode from a different perspective, but it doesn't really reveal that much. And that's what I mean when I say this show thinks it's smarter than it is. It was just infuriating more than anything. I was irritated every time I watched an episode. I was like, here we go again. And I actually reacted over on my Patreon. So if you want to endure The Acolyte with me, you can find my reaction to every single episode on my Patreon. Godspeed, though, if you do that. Next, we got Fallout, which I started earlier in the year. I watched 3 episodes on Patreon and then I just fell off with it. Well, I picked back up with it, rewatched those 3 episodes and watched the 5 I hadn't seen this past week or so. Loved it. Fallout's my favorite show of the year. I'm putting it in S tier. This is fantastic TV. It's just so well put together. And as someone who hasn't played the Fallout games, so I really was unfamiliar with the lore, I was still able to get so immersed in this world. And I find that oftentimes when there's video game adaptations and I haven't played the video game, it can be a bit more of a struggle for me to buy in. I look at Sonic, for example. I look at the Mario movie, for example. Like, yeah, I know these characters, but I just don't feel invested. Polar opposite here with Fallout. I was in from the jump. A lot of that is due in part to the brilliant writing and the way that there's just such great payoff. By the end of the season, I felt like I was fed a 4-course meal. I didn't feel like I was, oh, I need more. Where's part 2? This season comes to a close wonderfully, and so much time is spent building this world. I've actually watched like a full-on hour YouTube video breaking down season 1, so it kind of, filled me in on some of the gaps I was missing without having played the game, so that was helpful, and I recommend doing that with shows or movies if you haven't, experienced the original source material like I hadn't with Fallout. But Walton Goggins, this character in this film, he plays Cooper, but then the Ghoul, obviously, is what he's kind of deemed later on. My favorite character in the show, one of my favorite TV characters all year. This show is just like a blender of every awesome genre. There's Western elements, there's some sci-fi fantasy, there's action, there's some comedy, it's a mystery at times. There are so many different subplots going on, but so much attention to detail put into every single one, and watching them intertwine by that finale was so beautiful. It really did move me. Like, I'm not lying when I say this. The finale of season 1 of Fallout, very comparable to season 4, episode 7 of Stranger Things, The Massacre at Hawkins Lab, in a sense that information is being told to the audience and certain characters are finding it out as well in different scenes. And so the way that it's all cut together is just masterfully crafted. This is top tier television to me, and I'm fully in. I'm intrigued to maybe even go play some of the games, and I'll definitely be watching future seasons forever. Fallout's my favorite show of the year. It's elite television. I'm so glad I went back and watched it. Next, we have Cobra Kai Season 6, specifically just Part 1 and Part 2, because Part 3 drops in February. We haven't seen how the season's going to end yet. I would give the edge to Part 2 if I'm comparing the 5 eps. The second part ends with that Sky Taikai brawl. It's wild stuff. I love me some Cobra Kai. Through the highs and the lows, I'm aware this show's beyond cheesy. I just eat it up. It's still so hard to judge because we haven't seen those final 5 eps. That finale is some of the best Cobra Kai content we've gotten. But as I've talked it out with people and let it marinate a bit, I do feel as though this season in particular, still fully on board, don't get me wrong, but this season in particular, some of the emotional weight, not there. Season 4 and Season 5, even Season 3, you could feel a bit more. I was of the opinion that Season 5 could have ended the show. We add like 20 minutes, have a bit of an epilogue, but now we're in the Sekai Taikai, the scale's bigger. I'm just worried. How are they going to stick the landing? I'm in. I really enjoyed it. I mean, you can watch my reaction here on the channel for free to every episode of the show, and I'll be reacting to the next 5 eps, but I don't know if it's S tier yet. The final 5 eps will dictate if it's S tier or not, but having not seen the full picture, I can't say Season 6 is outright S tier, because to me, there are better seasons of Cobra Kai. 3, 4, and 5, probably better through 10 eps. Probably. It's hard to compare because, again, we haven't seen the whole thing yet. I don't know if it's the worst season or not. It could end up being, but I won't know. The final 5 eps are really going to dictate a lot of that. So because of that, I am not comfortable going S tier, but I will go top of A tier because I enjoy the hell out of this show. And to just see these characters having grown so much from that first season to now, it's rewarding as a viewer. So they can kind of do whatever the hell they want with the show. Obviously, we're probably going to see Sekai Taikai conclude, but I'm at the point where I don't really care. Like, whoever wins Sekai Taikai, congrats. I care more about where these characters end up, ultimately outside of Sekai Taikai. I was always more emotionally invested in the All Valley. But anyway, next we have Echo, which is D tier. If given the choice to watch Echo or the Acolyte, I think I would actually watch Echo. So I'm going to put it over the Acolyte just because Echo has like Kingpin and he's played so well by D'Onofrio. But I'm not lying when I say that Echo is a complete mess. The first, I'd say, episode, almost the entire thing, is basically just scenes pulled from Hawkeye and re-edited for people who didn't see Hawkeye. It's basically one long previously on for Hawkeye. It shows like all of Echo's pivotal moments, but it felt so strange because to me, Echo could have been like a 2-hour movie, but they tried to stretch it into, I think, 5 episodes. Really weirdly paced. I don't ever envision myself watching this one again. Next, we have a batch of shows I haven't seen, which I'm a slacker, McFly, I get it. The Penguin, need to catch up on. I am very confident that if I watch The Penguin, it's anywhere from A to S tier. I love The Batman. I've seen it 3 times. I just was like, oh, I got to rewatch that movie before I watch The Penguin, and that was probably on me. I've seen The Batman 3 times. I don't need to rewatch it before The Penguin, but I was like, oh, I got to find time to rewatch The Batman before I can watch it. If I would have just watched The Penguin, we'd be fine. I'm probably going to try and watch that in the next couple months because I do want to check it out and I know it's right up my alley. People have told me, Chris, you're going to love this show. It's just one I need to catch up on, so it's in that tier. And the same goes for X-Men 97. I never watched the original 90s X-Men cartoon, and so I felt out of the loop when this came out. However, people have told me it doesn't matter. The early going episodes of this show tell you everything you need to know and you won't feel lost. I'm a completionist though, and so I feel obligated to have to watch all those other episodes of the animated show just to like be really in the know and not feel lost ever, but we'll see. X-Men 97, not as high on the watch list, but people have raved about it, so had to mention it. And then we've got Squid Game Season 2, which I have seen. I'm going to put Squid Game Season 2, this is tough. I'll go top of B tier with it. I've done my research, and I guess they did film Seasons 2 and 3 back-to-back. This came out in December. Season 3 is going to come out in June of this year, thankfully, allegedly. The release date, like, kind of leaked online accidentally from Netflix. It was in a video description. It's been taken down since, but I would be willing to bet June is the release date. And this season starts a bit differently. We aren't in the games for a while. 4, 5, 6 and the salesman have like a crazy scene at the end of the first episode. And there's a lot of plotting going on, again, not in the actual games. Then when we get there, it feels like we're going through the motions at first. And then I quickly realized, oh, there's some new games here and they are keeping things fresh. So I bought into this season by the end. But by the end of the 7th episode, which was the finale of the season, it did just feel like a big mid-season finale and didn't bring anything to a close if we're looking at it as an actual whole season of television. What I've heard is that originally they did just want to do one big season 2, but it got too massive, and so they had to split it in half. And so season 3 is basically the part 2 of season 2. It's just not called Squid Game Season 2 Part 2. It's Squid Game Season 3 and Squid Game Season 2. Kind of frustrating, not gonna lie. So as an overall season, structurally, it feels like half a season. It feels like a part 1. I'm all for part 1s, but this one didn't have a ton of closure in my opinion. So I need to see the continuation of this. I was invested. I think they're doing really great character work with 4, 5, 6 and other characters, and I really want to know how the games are going to come into play during the middle of this uprising, essentially, because where we're at, in the review I said, it reminds me of how the Hunger Games series has the Hunger Games in the first 2 films, and then after that, it's like full-on revolution. I think we're kind of at that point now for Squid Game Season 3, so what's going to happen? Ready to see what they got cooked up for us. Next, we have Agatha All Along. This is another show that I started, fell off with it, and picked back up. I had watched, I think, the first 4 episodes earlier in September when it dropped, and then I played catch-up in December, watched the rest of the show. I don't know if I've ever talked about that except on live streams, but I've seen all of Agatha. I would say as a whole body of work, I'll go C tier with it right here. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, and I would take this over a good batch of the MCU Disney Plus shows like Echo, Secret Invasion, She-Hulk, for example. The first half of the show is way weaker, though, and that's a bummer. The first 4 or 5 episodes didn't really have me hooked. Then there's a certain thing that happens, and I was on board with it. Kathryn Hahn shows her comedic chops here, but also some really good dramatic acting that will pull on the heartstrings by the end of the season. Agatha took way too long to really get the momentum going, though, and that was a bummer for me, because once I was invested, it was almost too little too late, which is kind of a symptom of a lot of shows lately, unfortunately, or movies, is they really heat up right at the end, and then it's like, oh, that's it. I think a real problem with Agatha from the jump is that it released too late after WandaVision. It should have come out in 2022, to be honest with you, 1 year after WandaVision as opposed to 3 years after WandaVision. Stuff like that matters, and so, you know, I enjoyed the show way more than I thought I would, and Down the Witch's Road is a banger, but still, half of this season or more was pretty hard to sit through, and then the rest really picked up, and there was almost a tonal shift. So you got some clashing tones and episodes that are way better than others, so it was inconsistent. That's why it's in C tier. Next, we have What If Season 3, which I need to catch up on. I haven't seen it. I actually watched the first 2 seasons of What If, and honestly, I'm kind of tapped out. I have no desire to watch Season 3, so if you've watched it, let me know down below what you think, but most people who've seen Season 3 are like, it's terrible. This is like the final nail in the coffin for What If. Good riddance. People are like flaming it, and so that's been a deterrent for me to want to actually sit down and watch these episodes, because it's a time commitment. I know they're like 30 minutes, but still, I think there's 9 eps or something, which you sit down, that's a whole afternoon, that's a whole night of watching something, and if it's not good, whew, I don't really like a lot of the concepts. I saw the episode title list, didn't really convince me, so I feel like What If's biggest problem, and this is not an original thought, everyone else has said this as well, but I've felt it, is that the concepts they choose are not the most interesting. To me, I always thought What If should have gone the route of sort of switching a decision from one of the main MCU movies or shows, like what if Thor actually killed Thanos, or what if someone else snapped besides Hulk to bring everyone back, or what if the other half got snapped away. Like, there are so many fun little things they could have done, but instead they chose to go the route of having like a reoccurring group of characters who show up, and there's like through lines, there are certain one-off episodes, there are certain episodes that have connectivity. It was just a weird mishmash from the beginning, and I never really got invested in What If. I don't have a desire to watch Season 3, but I am a completionist, so one day I might tough it out. Next, we have Outer Banks Season 4. We got Part 1 and Part 2 this past year, and talk about a controversial finale. They kill one of the main characters. I won't say who if you haven't seen it and you're ever going to watch it, but I was so engaged with this season. I love this world. I've said many times on the channel, I could watch Outer Banks to the end of time. I eat up the teen drama and just the bullshit, honestly. It's so fun. I'm aware the show's cheesy. Some of the writing and performances can be a bit off, but I'm invested. It's like the reality TV that people like to watch. This is just a scripted teen drama show, and I still view it as like reality TV. What's going to happen next on Outer Banks? I would say, in terms of pure enjoyment, I enjoyed this more than The Bear, and I know The Bear is like prestige television. Trust me, I am a huge fan of The Bear Seasons 1 and 2, but Season 3 took a huge dip in quality. I do this based on personal favorites. I would say I honestly am going to put Outer Banks in B tier. I'm going to put it above Skeleton Crew. Like, look, I could watch Outer Banks at a time. I'm aware that you could critique the hell out of this show from a writing standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint. I'm just so engaged and sat for this show. The ending did piss me off a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, but I can't sit here and be like, oh, well, I just gotta put it in this tier because objectively this and this didn't work. Well, this is not an objective list. This is my opinion. So Outer Banks I would watch over a good chunk of shows on here. Really curious to see where we're headed in Season 5, post-death of one of our main pogues. Made a gutsy choice. The behind-the-scenes drama there, I mean, I won't get into it, but if you know, you know. You could speculate on that for days. So, I mean, Season 4, better than Season 3. Seasons 1 and 2 I'd probably still give the edge over for, but it's good that we're back on track. Season 3 was by far the worst, so I'll go like middle of B tier, solid. Next we have Arcane, which I need to catch up on, but I would say it's like right here in terms of importance of catching up on, this being top of my list, this being back of my list. I watched like the first 4 episodes of season 1 a while ago, and I was reacting on the channel, and I kind of just fell off with it. It wasn't like fully investing me. The end of episode 3 was insanity. And then I realized that I believe there are 9 episodes in season 1. The first 3 are like an arc, the next 3 are an arc, and so on. I've heard season 2 is awesome, but I just don't have the desire to go back and revisit that world right now. I don't know if it was the animation. I don't know if it was just the fact that I was doing a reaction series. If I go back, I would just do it without content. I would just watch the show. Maybe I'd enjoy it a bit more, but I've heard really good things about the way that it wraps up. Some people saying it's one of the best TV shows ever, one of the best animated shows ever, so we'll see if I ever get around to it. I'm actually watching Succession right now, so that's kind of on the front of my mind for TV. Next, we got The Boys Season 4, which I really enjoyed, but I will say it could be the weakest season out of the whole Boys universe that includes Gen V and then the prior seasons of The Boys. It ends on such a high note, like all the momentum picked up at the very end, and then it was like, boom, you gotta wait till season 5, which was a bummer. But like I said with some other shows on this list, it almost felt like too little too late. The finale of this show could have almost been the mid-season finale, and that would have been a lot more impactful and I think made for just a better season of television. I'm very hyped to see how this show ends in season 5. It feels like final, the stakes are really high, and people are gonna die. Like, main characters from this show are goners in that next season. But a lot of this season I felt spent too much time focusing on being crude and in your face with the violence. They've kind of upped the gross out factor every season, and here they went a bit overboard in my opinion sometimes, like the dungeon episode. Ugh, I get the heat. That being said, this is still solid television, and I would put it in B tier probably right here. Honestly, shoot, I may even go over Squid Game with it. I'm actually going to move Squid Game back over it. They're about neck and neck for me, but Gen V Season 2 comes out this year. I think that's going to play a big role in how things conclude for the Boys universe. Solid season. Not the best of the Boys, and I hope that Season 5 is an improvement. They really set things up to be great in that final season, though. And the last show I have is House of the Dragon Season 2, which kind of came and went. I feel like this is almost a forgotten show that came out this year. Look, a lot of time is spent meandering here, much like in The Bear. You got, Damon at this castle for the majority of the season, and just like The Boys, the finale, the final 10 minutes, really pick up steam, and it's like, boom, you gotta wait till next season. And so both seasons, The Boys and House of the Dragon, spend so much time kind of in one place, almost treading in water, and then boom, at the very end, we go full speed and the credits roll, and that's upsetting. Sure, it sets up their next seasons for success, but structurally, as an individual season of TV, it feels incomplete. I would say House of the Dragon is still B tier. I'd put it like right here. Honestly, like, I enjoyed it. There's one episode that's an elite episode. I think it was the 4th episode, I want to say. Wild stuff. You get some dueling dragon action, and it felt like a classic Game of Thrones battle for a bit there, and I think we're headed in that direction. I'm still invested in the political side of things and people backstabbing each other. Still, I have to look at the B-row here and go, they're all very solid, enjoyable seasons of television. I just don't think they really reached their full potential. I'm looking at The Boys, Squid Game, and House of the Dragon mainly. I just think that they ended things too soon. They could have kept it going for a couple more episodes and really been remarkable, but hopefully that momentum can carry over into their new seasons. But that's my tier list ranking of the 2024 TV shows I watched, including some that I need to catch up on. Let me know in the comments down below your favorite shows from 2024 and which ones I should prioritize that I didn't have on this tier list or that were included in the need to catch up on tier. But of course, hit that like button, subscribe to that notification bell, and stay tuned for more content coming very soon. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.